top 5 creator in fintech, in crypto, in the whole of UAE. You're also part of the top 100 in worldwide.
If you've seen 8 Mile, the movie with Eminem.
Yes.
Many times.
There we go.
Actually, this is a touchy
Oh,
subject.
we'll get there. It's not touchy. Like,
We'll keep it behind the scenes.
if this was like the late night show, number one thing that makes a founder stand out.
Welcome to Known, where tech brand builders share their journeys and teach you how to build your own. Today, we're joined by Giovanni Everduin, aka Gio. Gio is, among many other things, CSO at CBI. His career spans from politics to banking and founding his own creative agency. This should be exciting. Let's dive in.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
And welcome.
Thank you.
So to kind of like I guess set the tone for the conversation, we'll dive into it. We did do a bit of digging to make sure that we ask all the right questions today, and the very obvious space is LinkedIn, I guess. And actually, your about section is very interesting, and there's one part which I think is like the starting line.
Okay.
That says, and I want to read this, is I'm a Caribbean Dutch guy living in Dubai, a DeFi guy working in TradFi, and the Harvard Business School alum.
What a flex.
Did you? Why those three facts? Like, why did you pick those?
I mean, the last one is a flex, right? And I had to learn to get better at this because honestly, there was a time where I feel like almost shy. Like, you know, people would ask me like, where'd you go to school? And I'd be like, oh, I went to Boston. And this is a thing that a lot of folks from Harvard do. It's like, oh, I went to Boston or Cambridge, Harvard Business School. And then at some point, someone's like, well, you know, you shouldn't walk away from the things that, you know, not only define you, but you're proud of. And so now I figured I'd put it there, right? It's important. And in the world of LinkedIn, which is a curated set of who I am and, you know, how I like to position myself, I think it matters. Now, the first one, that's really who I am. Caribbean Dutch, you know, Suriname, Aruba, a lot of different ethnicities mixed in there, coming together, third culture kid, effectively. And that's shaped me in every way that I can even think of if I reflect right now. And so it's that combination of like very different cultures and different upbringings that kind of come together in one. And that then ultimately, you know, I always felt like that sort of made me into a bit of a bridge between different worlds, different cultures, a translator. And so that was a really important part. It's also the purest to the core of who I am, right? So I figured that's how I define myself. And then, you know, the TradFi, DeFi, or the DeFi and TradFi, you know, it's a little bit of, it works well, you know, the contradictions, obviously it helps with the memory recall, but at the same time, again, it's also really who I am. Like, I have always been someone who doesn't fit here or there. I've been somewhere in the middle. And right now, that is DeFi and TradFi. You could say this is tech and conventional business, private, public, whatever you want to call it. But I always felt like I kind of live in that intersection of different worlds. And I figured if you're going to read anything, right, if this is, I guess, my hook, then I want you to, if when you read that first sentence, you should get a sense of, okay, I sort of get how this guy at least positions himself. Does that answer the question?
Right. You mentioned here something that's very interesting. You said third culture kid. That's also something that I saw on your website.
Yep.
And I saw that you also describe yourself as a contrarian.
Yep.
What do you mean by this?
Oh, it means I have a lot of minority opinions. No, I mean a contrarian in the sense that there's a really good book about contrarian leadership, but contrarian in the sense that, look, a lot of people these days are contrarians, you know, almost as a method in order to create engagement, right? Mm-hmm. So if everyone goes left, you're going to go right. Yeah. Because that creates, you know, reactions and everything else. That's not the type of contrarian, at least I think I want to be. Contrarian more in the sense that I don't have any problems voicing opinions that may or may not agree with, you know, majority opinions. And so, you know, it's a level of healthy skepticism. You know, those of you, I know you spent some time in the Netherlands, we're very skeptical people. And so a healthy skepticism, but also the kind of willingness to be able to vocalize that, even when it doesn't necessarily always work well in your, you know, favor, because very few people want to hear the opposite of what they truly believe and think. And so in that context, I kind of consider myself a little bit contrarian. Mm-hmm. And outside of the fact that I think, you know, you asked me about the positioning statement, again, over time, because this is not something I was born with or was a strategy, but I just started realizing that being authentic, like tapping into who you really are as a person at your core, and then being able to kind of become that person everywhere you are. Right. I used to be, it's kind of like if you've seen The Dark Knight with Batman, it's like, who's wearing the mask? Is it Bruce Wayne or is Batman wearing the mask of Bruce Wayne? Right. Who's the real person? And so I had to figure out for myself, who am I? And then I had to learn not to have to wear the mask, which means I used to play this persona of Gio depending on the context and the people that I was with.
Yeah, I know
Right?
what you mean. This third culture thing, right?
Yeah.
Being in between two very different worlds, and kind of have to adapt in order for people to understand you, right?
Right. But it also means you lose you,
Yeah.
right, at the core. And that's, a big part of me growing up was that playing a role or playing into what I at least thought were expectations that people had of me, or the role I had to play within a certain context, a certain community. And so now I feel like I'm just me. I'm me everywhere. And that by default becomes contrarian because especially on platforms like LinkedIn, everyone talks about want to be authentic, right? But being authentic is not easy. And it comes with significant drawbacks, right? And it also means that you say things that you know that not everyone is always going to appreciate or like. And you sort of have to be honest to yourself with a disregard for external validation. And that's very vulnerable. And it's not necessarily very easy. And so that's partially also being contrarian, which is, if you read some of my stuff, hopefully you know that it's never AI because I use a type of tone and, what's the right word? Self-deprecating humor. But that's who I am. That's how I would speak to you, if the cameras were off, right? And so it's not like I switch on a button and I'm a different person all of a sudden.
Right.
Which I think there's a lot of that going on. And I'm not judging that. I understand it. But for me, contrarian means I'm just going to be me everywhere. Now, you can like that. You can connect with that. You cannot. That's all good. But at least you know who I am.
It's interesting. I mean, you mentioned that it took quite a bit of effort on your end to get to that authentic self, and you're absolutely right. I think the word authenticity keeps on being brought up with building your brand, whether that your company brand, your personal brand. Like everyone says, you have to be authentic, but I agree. I think it's very hard. I'm just curious. Was there a turning point when you said, "Wait, I don't want to play this role anymore. Like, I want to be me." Like, was there something that happened, or was it like a gradual shift that you just found yourself in?
It was both, really. It was a gradual shift in the context of over time as you get a little bit older and, you have kids and things. You start looking at life differently. And honestly, I just got tired of wearing the mask.
It takes a lot of energy, right?
It takes so much energy.
Adapt constantly to
Yeah,
other...
it's like, what am I doing? And why am I doing this, right? Like,
who are you doing it for?
Well, exactly, right? I'm playing to an audience that may or may not even watch me, right? I think most of the time we are so concerned about what other people think. Most people don't even think about us, right? And so that was number one, gradually. And then I'd say gradually just getting exhausted of having to do it. And then, I'll plug Harvard again, but I was in a class with Bill George. Shout out Bill George, amazing professor, did a lot of work on authenticity, and he wrote this book, True North. And so we did the class, and the class is very intense. You're forced to kind of reflect on yourself and who are you at the core, and who do you want to be, and what's stopping you from, and the course is authentic leadership, right? So in terms of, you can't be an authentic leader unless you first tap into who you are. You got to be true with yourself before you can be true with others. And so that kind of gave me a framework where I really was forced to look inside the ugliness, the nice things, and kind of figure out, who am I really? And in order to be authentic, it means I also had to embrace a lot of things about me that I didn't really like. A lot of my shortcomings, but that's also who I am. Yeah. On top of the fact that you can't really start working on them and improving them until you first acknowledge them. Exactly. Right. But so being comfortable with who I am, even the things that I'm not so proud of, and there's many of those, and being able to speak about it openly with a level of humor, that's my kind of like coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. It became a bit of a superpower. And I feel like if I know my shortcomings and I go on a panel or anywhere else or have a conversation with you and I can laugh about that proactively, there's nothing really that anyone can do to me, right? Like I just put on this massive deflector shield because if you've seen 8 Mile, the movie with Eminem.
Yes.
Many times.
There we go.
Good reference. Everyone, if you haven't watched it, you should.
You should watch it. Final battle with Papa Doc. That's exactly what he does, right?
I love this, yeah.
He kind of kills the battle by just killing himself and then kind of goes... Owning it. And then he just like, tell these people something they don't know about me. Well, there's nothing because you already owned it. So for me, the that came later. That movie came later. But that movie would have been, if I had to retell this story in a dramatized, made up version, I'd probably be like, and I watched that movie, and at that point, I knew I was going to be authentic. It's not true. But it's a great metaphor of what it means.
The way I even met you was at a conference, and it was, like I see you a lot, be it on stage or on social media, talk about, technological innovation, digital transformation, AI, blockchain. But actually what I was very curious to learn in preparation for this session is that deep preparation, of course, is that you actually started in HR.
Oh, God. Yes.
So give us a bit of a snapshot. Now you talked a little bit about people, so I get a hint of how that could have started. But how did you come from, consulting in HR, leading incredibly, mass scale projects within human resources field into now, trying to transform finance?
Started from the bottom, now we're here. Look, the story there really is I rolled into HR. I never planned to be in HR. I also never planned to work in a bank. I actually never planned really anything. I just kind of rolled through, and intuition kind of told me like this makes sense, it doesn't make sense. I started as a political analyst in Mexico City. Like that was my real first kind of job during the first run for presidents for Manuel López Obrador, El Peje, failed run at the time. And then I went into consulting because I went into consulting, and I ended up doing, we call it human performance, whatever, at the time. And so that really came down to strategy, but strategy from an organizational perspective. And what is that? I mean, HR is part of that. It's company culture, it's incentive structures, it's org design, these kind of things. And so from that, then, I ended up here, actually. I'm gonna take it a bit of a short version. I did consulting out of London originally for Accenture for 5 years, working with big companies doing these large transformations. Really interesting, really fun, but at the same time, you kind of come in, you do something, and then you leave. I was never able to kind of like own anything. And so, like most consultants, at some point I was like, I want to actually, I want to get my hands more dirty. I want to be in the business. Got an opportunity with Emerson BD at the time, who was setting up this new company called Tanfeed, startup. I was one of the first, 20 people or something they hired. And that was like build a whole new company with a unique company culture. Like the company culture was a lot more akin to Silicon Valley startups than it was to, a Middle Eastern bank. And so in the course of maybe 3 to 4 years, we kind of built that out to about 3,500 people. It was super interesting, great time, great group of people. The story of Tanfeed made into a Harvard Business School case study. Flex. And at
that was before you joined Harvard, right?
That was during. It was before. The case study came out in 2014, and then I went at 15. Right. That was kind of like a catalyst for me to say, okay, well, I kind of want to, I got to know quite a few of the faculty contributing to the case, the lead professor, and then, one thing led to another.
Was that on your application, I'm assuming? I want to get into Harvard. And by the way, you guys made a case study on my work already.
Yeah, well, and the CEO at the time of Tanfeed, shout out Sahil, who also is the one who hired me into Dubai or the UAE, also hired my wife. So also I have to shout out Sahil for putting us together. But he'd gone to Harvard Business School, and so we had these conversations, and then one thing led to another. Now, after that, like I said, I rolled into HR, not necessarily because I always thought I wanted to be in HR. I studied psychology, so in a way, it kind of links up. But I genuinely believe that people are ultimately at the core of any type of innovation or structure or strategy, right? Mindsets, beliefs, behaviors, incentives, in my mind, those kind of things make the world go round. And so after I finished in Tanfeed, it became more BAU administration. Not, if you read through my profile, that's not really my thing. So I was looking for something new. Decided to never work in a bank again. Famous last words. Set up my own creative agency. Did actually really well. We shot a really cool documentary about women. Won a bunch of awards. Premiered in the Sarasota Film Festival in Florida, and as I was really happy not being in a bank, I got a call from a friend if I wanted to have this conversation to help out this bank. And then that was meant to be a 3-month project. And then that became 6, became 9, became 6 years now. And kind of ended up me working in CBI, where I got a really great relationship with the CEO. And so we went on this journey where he wanted to build something unique and transform the bank, which he has done very successfully. And so I've just been part of that journey. That's the story.
So now you are mainly, among many other things, CSO at CBI, right? What does that entail?
What does a job mean? Look, it's strategy and innovation. And so I guess there's 3 sides to my job. The first one is traditional banking strategy, which I would almost say in no disrespectful way, the more boring stuff for someone like me. The innovation part is really figuring out what's the future of finance, what's the future of banking, new technologies. And then the third part of it is kind of like the experimentation, which follows that, which is we set up CBIx, as both of you well know, and that's our innovation lab and our corporate VC. And so it's really where we can experiment. I talk about breaking eggs to make omelets. You can't really do that in a regulated bank for many different, very valid reasons. And so having this lab allows us to play around with stuff, build use cases, test use cases, and figure out what the future is going to look like. Because we genuinely believe that you can't just, in order to imagine a future, you got to kind of start living a little bit in the future. You got to get your hands dirty, and you have to try things. Like, it's no different than a founder or a builder would do it. You have to try stuff, figure out what works, figure out what doesn't work, and why it doesn't work, and then keep iterating and building.
I mean, your career journey is fascinating, and I just love that at every turn you're like, and then I accidentally started doing this, and then I kind of fell into that, and then so everything feels like it's just the right time, the right moment, the right sort of like meeting the right people at the right time. But I think, and like one of the main reasons why we really wanted to get you as a guest today is that you've built a very interesting personal brand. And I think as a guy who works in banking, right, it's definitely unique in that sense. Like, I don't think a lot of bankers or people that work in corporate see it as either a goal or maybe an advantage. So my question is more, did you, was that intentional on your part to build Geo the brand?
I don't even know what Geo the brand is, honestly. Like I said, I but here's the thing: if you keep it real, right, you don't really have to worry about Geo the brand. I am who I am. Now, how that comes across to you or to anyone else, God knows. But at least I'm gonna be consistently me. And if that's your definition of Geo the brand, then it's me. There's no intent behind it. Yeah, sure. I might embellish a little bit, or amplify certain things a little bit, right? Like I have a flair for the dramatic, and I understand how social media works. But at the core of it, it might be at best a tiny exaggeration, but it's always me. Like I'm not pretending to be someone that I'm not. And like I said, for me, the most important thing is if you see me or hear me talk at a conference or in a podcast, and you were to meet me, you should really feel that this is the same person consistently. Right. You should never feel like, oh, whoa, this is a very different person, for good or for bad, right? And I've had those experiences with people where I saw someone or hear them talk, and then you meet them, and it's a very different experience. And again, I'm not going to say good or bad. It's just different. For me, I want consistency. Whoever meets me, wherever you meet me, this is me, which also means I talk about very honest and vulnerable things like burnout, right? Some people will tell you like, oh, you shouldn't. The amount of times that people have told me, you shouldn't talk about that. I loved your post. And they will write me in a DM, right? Like, I love your post, but I can't like it. I'm like, what do you mean you can't like it? I mean, it's fine, don't like it. But what do you mean you can't? Like, is there like a like police? And they're like, oh no, because, it's a bit... Like, okay, well, I don't want to have to feel like that. For me, the freedom I have is within reason of not insulting or defaming anyone. I'm just going to speak my truth. And that's it. I position it as my truth. I don't believe that there's more. I don't really believe there's anything like unchallenged facts anymore. I think we live in a world where everyone has a perception and a perspective. And so you got to respect that. And so here's my perspective. And I'll tell you, it's a perspective. Feel free to challenge me. Understand my perception. Right? That's why I'm being very honest about who I am. So you understand my world. Now you can come into that world and see what I see, or you can decide to stay there and see what you see. I'm perfectly fine either way. But I guess that's the Geo brand.
Right. You mentioned your recent post on LinkedIn about burnout.
Right.
I wanted to know, within your career, which spans from literally like everything possible, like we were literally like, what didn't he do? What was the toughest experience for you? And what did it teach you?
There's many to choose from, but I think there's two experiences. One was more generic and it happened multiple times, so I won't give you a specific, but it's this notion of failure, right? You start something and you think you're really good at it. You get to this point where you've been delivering something and people start telling you you're good. And then all of a sudden, inevitably, this will happen to almost everyone, I think, you'll fail. And sometimes you feel spectacularly. It's very, very painful. Painful for yourself, painful for the kind of, because then you realize how much you got hooked on kind of like the validation, the external validation. And when that goes, that's very, very painful. So that was tough. Learning to accept that you will make mistakes, learning to accept that you got to get back up, and learning to accept that, it's not the end of the world. Right? There's this, okay, I'm going to date myself now because I think you both are too young to get this reference. Let's see. But there's a gentleman called Colin Powell, used to be, Secretary of Defense, War now, in the U.S. during the Bush Junior days. And he had this saying, like, things always look better in the morning, right? And that comes with, I think that kind of wisdom comes with age and with time, and it comes with experience of having fallen down and realizing things are never as bad as you think they are. And if you zoom out enough, things always look better. The second one is the burnout one. That was very, very painful because for me, I didn't think, and this is very naive, but I didn't think you can burn out from something you love. Oh, I always assumed that if you love doing what you're doing, it's nearly impossible. I thought burnout is like, oh, I hate my job, right? Well, guess what? Wrong. You can definitely burn out from doing what you love. In fact, you probably burn out faster because you go so much harder at it, right?
Rolling.
And so for those of you, if you've been in a burnout or if you're going through it, there's a lot of signs along the way. Your body, your mind, everything is kind of giving you signals like, hey, be, In hindsight, I look back, I'm like, God, it was so obvious. But, when you're in it, you don't really see it. Now, I'm sort of blessed because now I know the signals. I can recognize the signals. And also, because of that, I now have the ability to do something about it, which is still not very easy. Because if you have a very eclectic set of interests, as I do, that comes with a real risk of burnout. The tricky part, just because, I've said all those things doesn't mean that you can just do everything. And that's a lesson I had to learn, which is you can sort of have it all, not at the same time, and there will be trade-offs. And if you are not aware of the trade-offs, you're trading off either yourself and your health or your family or both. And these are the worst things to trade off, by the way, right? So not making a decision is making a decision. Not prioritizing is prioritizing. Because you deprioritize the things that are usually at the core are, in my opinion, the most important for you. And that's something I had to learn. I thought somehow that, personal well-being, family would just work its way out. But obviously it doesn't, right? It's work. You still got to put in the work and the effort. In fact, you should want to put in more work and effort than you do in all the other stuff. Because at the core, that's really what's important. And becoming a father, getting married was the first one. Becoming a father really changed my perspective on life and what's important and what's not important. And I'm trying, and I'm not good at this at all, but I'm really trying not to let the small stuff sweat me as much, and also not care as much about people's opinions.
Top 5 creator in fintech, in crypto, in the whole of UAE. Boom. Right? And that's, you're also part of the top 100 in worldwide. Mm-hmm. The question is, do you consider yourself an influencer?
I take pride in the fact that people enjoy reading some of the stuff that I write or listening to some of the stuff that I say. I take pride in that. I take pride in the fact that people, that I have really good people around me and a good network of people that I look up to and respect, who equally like me and respect me. I think that for me is very, very important. These accolades, I could sit here and say like, it doesn't really matter. Nobody, of course it matters. Like all of us are playing the same game. It's an attention game. And so it does matter because it helps me get my word out, right? Which helps me achieve whatever it is that I want to do. So do I want to influence people? Yes, because I believe I have things to say that I think can make a difference. Am I an influencer? I don't know. You tell me.
And on top of that, you're also quite a great storyteller, right? Be it from your content on panels, conferences, your content on LinkedIn, on your blog. Where do you get the inspiration from? Because they say that in order to be inspiring, you have to be inspired yourself. So what is your main source of inspiration outside? Like, is it books? Is it media? Is it podcasts?
It's everything, to be honest, right now. It's everything. And the problem with content these days, it's like drinking from a fire hose. There's just so much of it, right? And there's so much niche content. Because when I grew up, you would have a movie in a movie theater. There was no Netflix at the time. And you would watch like program TV. That's very different. Now you can get anything from anywhere, from like a random person that lives in, I don't know, Argentina, who writes about very specific crypto stuff. So whatever your interest may be, you can find it online somewhere. But it's a combination. Books, especially when I was younger, there's a lot of books that I think formed the way I think and my cultural references. Movies, definitely. Music, a big hip-hop guy. Eminem. You find me quoting a lot of Drake. We can have a conversation on Kendrick versus Drake. But
yeah, actually, this is a touchy subject.
We'll get there. It's not touchy. Like,
we'll keep it behind the scenes.
Yeah, keep
not
it
to
behind
trigger
the
anyone.
scenes. Kendrick won the hype war, but I think if you look at the pure lyricism, that's not even a debate. There's this quote, like, I have this, shout out Azim. Azim and I have this t-shirt. We're both Drake fans, stans. And we have this t-shirt that says, hating Drake doesn't make you deep. That's it. But I also think TV, all right? A lot of TV shows have been very important to me. But the thing for me about telling stories, the thing that has probably been the thing that I borrow the most from, maybe put it differently, is comedians. So anything from, growing up, Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, Kevin Hart, Andrew Schultz right now, the way they construct their stories, because I think comedy is really storytelling, ultimately. You tell relatable stories and anecdotes, and then you do it in a way that people can kind of reflect and laugh on. And so when we did the panel, we talked about this a little bit. I always feel like when I'm on a panel, I'm not there, well, at least for me, I'm not there to shill you a product, right? That's the luxury I have. I don't have to. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't have to. So I'm there. I look at myself as entertainment. You came to a conference because you want to hear something interesting or, feel something. So I'm here somewhat to educate and entertain you. And part of the entertainment is, I think, having a couple of really interesting jokes. Also, it helps if I don't have proper content. I can just make a nice joke, but I think it's relatable. And so for me, it's really important to not take yourself too seriously. And I don't like to have like a set of like structured talking points. Because the problem that I have personally when I go to a conference, if you have the same talking points everywhere, I've seen you at one conference, I really don't need to see you, whoever you are, again. Because I know what you're going to say, and I know how you're going to say it, right? So I'd rather go to people who kind of go a little bit off script and just have a genuine conversation, because there's far more interesting insights, I think.
Right.
Or at the very least, I feel like, oh, wow, that was a cool conversation. And so I've seen people who do this really well, and I always feel like I want to be able to make people feel what I felt when I saw that person.
Right. Interesting. And basically, so you said books, movies, comedy as well, and I guess
Video games as well.
Okay.
Video games as well. Video games are great escapism. Yeah.
And I guess also your personal experience, right? Working with a lot of different brands in a lot of different industries.
Yeah, I learned a lot from. I learned a lot in terms of storytelling. I learned a lot during my creative agency, which you can relate to, because you work with consumer brands. And the way you position products there is really telling stories, relatable stories and evoking emotions. And so in a way, learning the technicalities behind how you do, PR and marketing and branding the right way, because there's ways to do it, but the right way, like for instance, how Nike, used to do it at their peak and maybe still does. There's an art in there. And I think that's a great framework for how you tell a personal brand story.
I mean, sorry, because you didn't brag, so I will do that for you. In your creative
brag?
agency, experience, you worked with some really cool brands. Like we're talking Vans, Bloomingdale's. Like you just said consumer brands, and I'm like, okay,
there are consumer brands,
absolutely. But we want to give you a shout out at this podcast as well. And it's interesting that you mentioned that creating a brand is an art form. during your time in the agency, do you feel like you kind of crafted, found, or somehow identified this sort of like a perfect framework to create a brand, be it a corporate or a personal one?
That's a good one.
That's a really good one. I have no answer to that. The answer I would give you is probably no. Definitely on the personal side. Like I said, there's no framework. The framework is, don't build a framework. Just be you and, stick with you. Because here's the thing. If you are who you are, you don't really have to think about anything else. There's not like, oh, okay, I have to... Because a framework really means that you are, you position yourself in a certain way for certain audience and certain occasions. That is very complicated, having to remember all your lines and your angles.
Right.
And so for me, just being me makes it super easy. It's just who I am. And that's really the framework. Now, at a corporate level, it's different, obviously. I think there's a lot of frameworks you can use. I'll tell you something that, I used to do a little bit of teaching. And what I usually told the class when they looked about brand marketing and strategy and transformation, because if you think about transformation, right? Or you think about innovation or change management, ultimately it's storytelling. Right? People don't misunderstand. It's ultimately telling a story of going from A to B and then helping people get along that curve. Now, a story starts with a beginning, it ends with an ending, there's a middle, and there's characters in there. Right? Very, very basic things. Most people forget that. When they tell a story, there's no beginning, there's no ending. They often go somewhere in the middle, and there's no real characters. If there's no character, then why would you relate to it, right? So how do you build an emotional connection with the story that you're telling? If there's no, beginning, a context setting, or a hook, depending on how you want to structure it, and an ending, right? A resolution of sorts, or a takeaway. And you should tell people, like, just if you craft it at that level, super simple, 4 points, what are those elements? You already told a much better story than most people ever have. But I think right now, sometimes there's just such an overflow of telling a story for the sake of telling a story. Again, that I genuinely believe an authentic story, you don't really have to craft it. It's a story that you just tell because it's in you. Think about your most favorite movie or favorite TV show or episode. And think about how that story is structured, right? And then just use that. Because if you like that and you got sucked into it, you should be able to dissect what are the different pieces, and that's how you tell a story. When I started as a consultant, it was really, I wasn't allowed, like you got to understand, I had to earn the right to use PowerPoint. So it started with, here's a bunch of pages, A4, write the titles for every slide that we're going to make, and that's it. And I'm like, okay. And then you do that, you show it to the partner in this case, and he was an ex-marketing exec called Colin Sloman. I've learned so much on storytelling from Colin. So you do that, and then he would kind of put it all together and read it and go, doesn't make sense. He's like, until you can master the art of telling a story with only the titles and someone reads it without knowing any of the content and it makes sense to them, he's like, at that point, you've earned the right to now put the content. He's like, but you got to think through the broad structure first of, right? Like if this was a Netflix TV show or movie, like what are the chapter titles? Or if you ever done a screenplay, there's a way how you read, how you write the treat, right? So do the outline first, and then work your way to the content. I think a lot of people do it the other way around. They have all this content in their head, and then they try to build structure around it, as opposed to thinking, well, what's the structure of the story I want to tell? And again, back to the comedians. I think comedians are really good at that. Like people think it's just jokes, but most of these jokes, like if I look at Kevin Hart as an example, he sets them up early, and then there's repetition, and he paints a picture, and he goes back to it, and he leads you down this path of a story, and it's a skill.
We talked a lot about how you're telling stories and influencing people, but
well, trying to influence
people, doing it very successfully, in their opinion. But you're also being pitched a lot, right?
Yes.
You're being pitched quite a lot,
Yes.
and so in the way that founders come and talk to you and try to pitch you, what are the things that they would say or do that would be influencing you? Does that make sense?
For good or bad?
For
okay.
Good, preferably.
Well, okay. And it's a great question because I get pitched a lot.
What
these
makes
days.
their story stand out from all of the noise?
Number one. Like if this was like the late night show, number one thing that makes a founder stand out: authenticity. I might be biased here, but honestly, if you can tell a relatable story, right, of why you're doing or what you're building or sketching a problem, make it relatable. That's by far, if you make it relatable, I will now give you my real attention because you hooked me. It's like if you do LinkedIn content, I had to learn this. I used to just write stuff. And then, I understand now that there's a structure to it. You need to have a hook and you need to have this. I really hate it. I don't want to write with that intent, but I sort of do a little bit of an optimization on what I would have written anyway, and then kind of figure out, okay, well, if people are only going to see the first 2 lines, right? That's really same thing. That first 2 lines of a LinkedIn post is your opening statement as a founder. If you don't grab the attention or interest at that point, most people just disconnect after that. That's number one. The second thing is know your audience. This is maybe the most important piece of advice I've been giving for the last 10 years is know your audience and speak their language. If you are a crypto person pitching to a bank, there are certain terms you really do not want to use. Full stop. A, because nobody understands them, and the people that do sort of understand them have a very negative connotation with them, right? If you want to sell, which is ultimately what pitching really is, or convince, you need to understand who is your audience, what are their motivations, what's their context, what's the language framework that they have, and then you kind of you shift their perspective into yours, but you do that by meeting them in their world, not the other way around. For me, communication is about the onus on successful communication is about the sender, not the receiver. And I think people get that wrong. Like, oh, they don't understand what I'm saying. Well, if they don't understand what you're saying, you're probably not explaining it in a context that they can relate to it. Right? So ultimately, you can get really upset with that, or you can try to figure out, well, what would make it more relatable for them? Because ultimately, that's your goal. They don't need to buy from you. You want to sell to them.
For someone who's listening right now, and they want to start working on their personal brand. And I mean, fair enough. You said that for you, it was a very sort of like unintentional journey. But they want to do that tomorrow. Like, what is your advice? Like, should they be honing on their LinkedIn profile? Should they be really trying to get to as many conferences and in-person sort of events? Like, what are the couple of things that they can do tomorrow?
So whether your choice of weapon, right? Meaning X, I still call it Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Reddit, Substack, whatever that may be. Your choice of weapon depends a lot on the purpose you have and the audience you want to reach, right? So first and foremost, you got to be clear about that. Like, who do you want to influence? Right? Who is your audience? Because your audience will live on some of these. Some of them will live on multiple of these, but the majority will live probably on one of them specifically. And in my world, it's primarily LinkedIn. I love Twitter, but I realized building an audience there is far more difficult. Like, I'll be honest, I've tried. I came from my top creator on LinkedIn high, and then I went into Twitter thinking like, boom, and it's like very, very sobering realizing that nobody cares, right? Crickets everywhere. You have to earn the right to be authentic on Twitter first. You got to first give value before people do that. So first of all, know your audience and where they are. And then the second thing is, look, AI, I think what AI can do really well for you is research. If you know that my audience is X and they tend to live on LinkedIn, AI can help you with, well, what's the kind of content they respond well to, right? It can give you some insight. And then you can choose how you want to fill that gap from your perspective. You can't be authentic, and you don't have to be, by the way. Nobody has to be authentic. But if you want to be authentic, it starts with being honest with yourself. There's a bunch of exercises you can do. True North is a great book. It has a workbook if you want to work through some of it to really tap into who you are as a person and embrace that. Because I think until you do, being authentic will be sort of tricky. And then even using AI, I don't think it's a problem. I made a conscious decision that that's not who I want to be, but I don't necessarily think it's a problem. Right? Not everyone has to be a great writer. Not everyone's going to be a comedian. Not everyone's going to be a pro athlete, right? So you use it in the context that it suits you and it suits your needs, and you shouldn't really care about what anyone has to say about that. At least of all me, because I'm here telling you that I don't really care what you think about me. So don't care about that. Use it as you see fit. Conference is an interesting one. I'm going to say something I'm going to regret, but conferences used to be great because I think it exposes you. And I genuinely believe that exposure is really important, right? You can't have expansion without exposure. So seeing and hearing different people talk about different topics, contrarian viewpoints that challenge your own viewpoints. You don't have to agree with them, but at the very least, a challenging contrarian viewpoint should push you to think deeper and harder about what you believe and why you believe it. And even if you end up thinking like this is still what I believe, that's great, because now at least you're a little bit more advanced in that. Going to conferences used to be much better. I find it now very difficult. There's too many of them. The threshold is too low. A lot of them are pay to play, meaning that speakers are not necessarily curated because of their ability to speak or contribute. It's more around their ability to pay. And I think because there's so many, it became an industry where usually for the big conferences that I actually like, the side events are more important, which is more networking and social. I still think that's probably good. I would tell people go to those and pick the right side events, meet the right people, have conversations. One thing I'll tell you is everyone in the kind of, especially in the fintech, crypto space, people are very open to sharing and connecting and conversing and having opinions and having debates. And I think you should take advantage of that. So that's probably my take. Put yourself out there, meet people, listen to people, be skeptical, feel free to challenge people, challenge your own thinking, be open to be challenged. And then if you want to write or if you want to create content, whatever that content may be, use whatever tools at your disposal to the extent that you feel comfortable with it. But honestly, do not give is this a PG podcast?
Go for it.
No, I shouldn't say this. Do not give any care
Okay, understood.
for what other people might think. Do you, right? Literally,
Right.
do you, and don't worry about anything else.
Okay.
It will either click or it won't.
So if I can sum it up, know your audience,
Yeah,
choose your platforms,
yeah,
get the right tools,
yeah,
and
Exposure.
get yourself out there.
yeah.
Love that. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before we wrap it up, we have actually a few flash questions
Ooh.
for you.
All right.
So, Alnora, do you want to?
Sure.
Yeah?
I think to some of them you might have already answered, but the point is first thing that comes to mind.
One word?
Yeah,
Yeah, one word.
you have to choose between both options.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. What is a stronger trend, neobanks or deobanks?
Dio. Did you say Dio bank?
Deobanks.
What is a Dio bank?
Okay, that answers the question.
yeah, okay.
How do I not know what a Dio bank is? Wait, what?
What's more powerful, LinkedIn or Twitter?
Twitter.
What do you prefer, conferences or private events?
Well-curated private events.
Your favorite content creator?
Any industry.
Ooh. Industry?
Any
industry.
Oh, any industry. Ooh.
Any media, any industry.
I'm gonna say some. I can't say just a word. I have to caveat this because otherwise people will start thinking certain
Kendrick. Kendrick.
things. God, definitely not Kendrick. Most consequential, influential content creator and most unlikely given his role in the old world way, Donald Trump.
The way you phrase it, I was like, yeah, he's gonna say Trump.
I have to say
Interesting.
it. I have to give him credit for that.
No, agree. AI or blockchain?
AI.
Effort or talent?
Effort.
Investing in personal brand or corporate brand?
Personal.
And $100 million or 100 million followers?
Is that a real question?
Yep.
Dollars. Always dollars. Oh my. What?
Amazing.
Yeah, actually, we had before Aliona Afanasieva from Being Crypto, and she had to do a quick math, and she was like 100 million followers because it for her in her line of
That
work
translates
it's-
to
more money.
see
So, yeah.
any of these these hypotheticals that you ever see on like Instagram or whatever. Always take the money. Money buys you immediate.
Just take the money.
It buys you optionality. Like everything else comes with it. What's a Dio bank?
Essentially, a deobank stands for a decentralized bank. So like offer everything that a bank would,
yeah,
but
yeah.
on chain.
That's
kind of
stablecoin rails. Okay, yep.
like
Okay.
self custody, that kind of stuff.
See, philosophically, I love that concept, and you know that, right? However, long term, I think it will be more of a neobank that uses deobank rails. I think the problem with these things is when the technology becomes the core identifier of what it is, I think that's fundamentally not what it should be. It should be under the hood technology. And so for me, it will be a neobank that actually is a deobank, but not positioning itself as a deobank because most people in this world do not care about decentralized. There's a handful of people that cares for it.
And that's why we're going to invite you to our conference to speak about that.
All right. Yeah. Happy to do so.
Thank you so much, Gio, for this podcast. This was Known. Thanks for being with us.
Peace.
This was Known by Input Global. Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe. Stay tuned for more.